Hey guys, it's Joe and this is another episode of Music Tech 101. In this video I'll be explaining audio editing and pitch and rhythm manipulation. So we'll start with audio editing, and one term you should know is truncating. This is to shorten something by cutting it off at the top, or at the end in our case. This basically means shortening audio using the scissors tool or the splitter tool like so. So it's pretty simple. Next is how to remove clicks and noises. Clicks and other noises may occur when you have a recorded audio signal start when the signal goes from 0 to a relatively high value. So if you listen carefully in this example, you can just about hear it at the start. So this has happened because this isn't the correct start from the audio signal, as I've shortened it as an example. So it comes on when the signal is already there. This is basically caused by the very sudden change in level and results with a click or a pop. It's also the same the other way around too, so if you have a strong signal go to 0 instantly, this will happen. To prevent this, you can use very quick fades so the signal eases in or out instead of being instant. You need to keep the fade short, as this will keep it relatively unnoticeable. The same applies when you have two separate audio signals right next to each other, and for this you'll need to crossfade. This will fade out the first signal whilst it's fading in the next one for a clean transition. So this recorded bass part was meant to be 1 bar of E and then 1 bar of D, but as it was misrecorded we'll have to fix that. It also really isn't in time. So we'll try and take a clean cut of 2 bars of E and then duplicate it and then crossfade them together. So we'll just measure out our 2 beats here. And then we can move them to where the notes start, and we'll zoom in so we can see them easier. So go close to the start with the E. That works well, so we'll just cut that out exactly where it is. So we can drag this across and we'll get it in time. And then we'll duplicate it. And as this isn't the start of the original audio signal, we'll need to put in a little fade here. So we'll zoom in, quickly put in a fade, and then we'll go and put our crossfade in over here. Again, good to keep it relatively short. And then we'll do another crossfade when we have our bar of D. So let's listen to what that sounds like. So it sounds quite clean. Now we'll get our D, and again we'll measure out 2 beats and zoom in to where the notes start. Again, that sounds quite good. So do the same, zoom in. And then we'll add our crossfades. It might be a little bit long, but we'll see when we try it. Then fade out. So let's give this a quick listen. There we go, sounds quite good. Next is normalising and inverting waveforms. This section is a bit more complicated and quite wordy, so I'll do my best to keep it brief. To normalise a waveform is to change the overall volume by a fixed amount to reach a target level. This is different to compression as it doesn't actually change the sound or timbre, it just changes the overall volume. There are two main reasons to do this. One is to get the maximum volume from a signal, and two is to match volumes between different audio files. Some may be quieter than others, and you may want to make them similar, but you don't want to change the dynamic range of it like a compressor would do. Normalisation isn't to be used in place of compression, as it can't affect the peaks in relation to the bulk of the sound. There are different methods. You have peak volume detection, which considers how loud the peaks are in the waveform, and it will then decide the overall volume for the file, and this is good for making it as loud as possible. Then there's RMS volume detection. This effectively takes the average of the volume. There may be peaks as well as quieter parts in an audio file, so take the average and that will be the volume. This creates a more natural sounding result, as it's closer to how the human ear actually works. That being said, it doesn't necessarily reflect how human hearing works, as we hear different frequencies at different levels as well. Normalisation is a great tool, but isn't always required and can lead to a loss in sound quality, so use it carefully. Inverting. This flips the audio signal upside down. It doesn't produce an audible change on a single waveform, but is noticeable when combining them. It's also useful for fixing phasing issues. Both of these functions in Logic can be done in the file section of an audio stem. So you see they've got much louder now I've normalised them. Now we'll move on to pitch and how we can manipulate or correct it. How to correct inaccurate pitch. For example, retuning a vocal part. To do this manually, you can change the pitch using the flex tool in Logic to permanently change it, or you can automate in changes using some pitch shifting software, either built in or using something like Melodyne. This means you can have the changes start and finish at desired points. It may need changing it by full semitones, which can be quite easy, or you may need to be more precise and change it in cents. Cents are also a unit of pitch measurement, and there are 100 cents to a semitone, and you tend to work in plus or minus 50 cents, as those will get you to the closest note that is trying to be hit. So here's our basic pitch shifter in Logic. We can change the pitch in semitones here, or by cents here. So I'll just show you the differences. You can also replace errors from material elsewhere in the song. For example, in the chorus, where this will most likely be repeated exactly the same more than once, if there's an error in the second cycle, you can cut and replace that error with a correct version from the first cycle. This is the same for correcting rhythms. For example, if the drummer loses the groove for a beat or two and everything sounds off, you can replace that with the correct part from elsewhere in the song. Either that, or if you're recording each part of the drum separately, you can shift the hits around so that they're in time. So if the odd snare or tom hit is slightly out of time, you can cut it out and shift it to where it needs to be. So in this brief example, I've got this groove here, which is fine for the most part, but the snare is out at one point, so we'll just go in and fix that. So it's just this one here, so we can zoom in on it and cut it out and then put it where it needs to be. Just needs to be pushed forward a little bit. Like so. A lot of this is relatively simple, but they are good tricks to remember for tidying up any mistakes in a project. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment or contact me via my website. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers.